So I'm just being honest. Like, if there's certain things I think about when I think about a race, just in general, not the individuals, just the generalities. So not all biases are bad, I think, right? There's some actually where you would associate positive behaviors as well. Hassan Ali Imam, over to you, please. Let me just get your thought. If there's anyone else like to come on stage, do shout now, because I don't want to stay too long. Hassan Ali Imam, over to you.
Hi, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum, and salams back in the UK. So good to be with you, and Happy New Year to everyone. Now, I'll try and answer the question. I still don't have an answer to the question, does ethnicity matter? But there are 4 brief points I will make, and let me just start my clock so I don't go over time. I'll just give myself to 3 to 4 minutes. In terms of the first point, I would look at it as whether immigrants contribute, make a net positive contribution to the country they reside in. Now, when I watched the interview between Andrew Gold and Steve Laws, Steve did ask the question, because Andrew is Jewish, what did the Jews contribute to the UK? Fair question, which deserved a fair answer. Andrew didn't quite answer the question. So the Jews had contributed a lot to the UK. The very small population, 300,000 population 100 years ago. If you look at the FTSE 100 index, the top 100 companies in the UK, 20% of them were actually founded by Jews. So you have Marks and Spencer, Tesco, the Samuel brothers of Shell, General Electric, and so on. So those 20% of those Jewish-owned companies contribute to £600 billion of market capitalization to the UK. And there are Jewish billionaires, so that means employment, contributing to the exchequer, and so on. And also, in the early 1900s, when General Electric had a contract with the UK, they actually developed the electrical infrastructure of the United Kingdom. Okay. So to ask the question, what did the Jews contribute? They contributed a hell of a lot to the UK. So 300,000 was the population 100 years ago. 100 years on, it's still the same population, 300,000. So they're the smallest minority that has made a huge contribution out of all the other communities, immigrant communities. Now, the second point, 3 questions I would like to pose to those who consider themselves to be English nationalists. Okay, I would like to see deportation for people like myself. I'm of Bangladeshi origin, or remigration, which is something that Connor Tomlinson wants. He wants all Muslims to be deported from the UK. So question number 1, and this was alluded to, I think, by Brother David Jones, that if you look at the DNA ancestry, I asked the question to artificial intelligence, what is the DNA ancestry of the English communities? A third of the DNA is Anglo-Saxon, if you look at the genetic markers, which means that there will be other origins, mixed origins. So the question is, if you do a DNA test yourselves and you find that actually, yes, a third will have Anglo-Saxon genes, but there are other ethnicities as well. What would your thinking be? How would your thinking actually change? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, nationalists have made a very robust argument in terms of the demographic changes that immigrants seem to be bringing, and the English culture is threatened. So I really do understand the case for remigration, okay, to protect the English identity. And I've said before, I've stood for Parliament before, I hope to stand again. But if the majority of people say, look, you're a Muslim Bangladeshi, you should not stand for Parliament, I'll have to consider that, okay? I will have to consider that seriously. So assuming we take this argument further, and Connor Tomlinson said, let the, centralize the, we should, i.e. the English should centralize the native cultures, okay? So I understand that, I respect that, it's a powerful argument. On that basis, would the English nationalists then recall or ask for a remigration of the European communities out in Australia, because the original inhabitants are Aborigines, because obviously when they settled, they changed the culture and changed the religion. Canada, the original inhabitants are Inuits and the First Nation communities. America got the native Indians. New Zealand, the original name is Aotearoa, so you have the Maoris, or the original inhabitants. Would you call for a remigration of those European communities back to Europe? So that's question number 2. Question number 3 is that delving further into the genetic makeup of various ethnicities, the original inhabitants of the United Kingdom were sort of humanoid, not Homo sapiens, only humanoid, so Neanderthals and the Homo heidelbergensis. After that came Homo sapiens. The first humans in these isles were the Celts. They came from Europe, okay? And the descendants of the Celts today are the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish. The Anglo-Saxons, where the English originate from, came in the 5th century AD. So the Neanderthals, we're talking about 500,000 years ago. Then the Celts, I think it's about 800 BC. There is a range. And now the Anglo-Saxons. So focusing on the culture, the native culture, should the English go back to Europe, the Germanic region, okay? So the English are made up of genetically of Angles, the Saxons, I forgot the third one. So the Jutes, okay. Should they go back to Europe then on that basis? So that's the third question. Finally, coming back to the question, does ethnicity matter? I don't know. I look at it in terms of immigration. Do they contribute to the UK or the countries that they live in? Yeah, and in terms of ethnicity, I think we have to understand what ethnicity actually means, because it can mean, one ethnicity can have various genetic makeups if you go through the DNA ancestry. So I think the question still remains unanswered. I'll still have to think about it. But those 4 points I've made, I hope some of those can be answered. Thank you very much.
Can I give my 2 pence worth? Sorry, your 3 questions. I'm completely forgetting what was the second one? I was going to answer the second one. Sorry, what was your second question again?
Yeah, the second question was, should, assuming there's a very strong argument for deporting us, immigrants, back to our home countries, should the European communities be deported back to Europe? Yeah.
Cool. Can I just give my 2 pence worth? So the thing with the country, because I was thinking about this as well. So if I'm not wanted in UK, one of the countries I would probably go to, one of the Western countries I would go to, is either Canada, America, and Australia, because I see those countries as different to Europe and Britain, because there were indigenous. If it's about ethnicity, well, then ethnically, because there are other people there. So I do see those cultures as different. So if people want to have if people are happy to have multiculturalism in Canada, America, and Australia, like, I'm not too bothered about that, if I'm being honest. So I would go to a Western country, because my mindset is Western. I can't get on with Pakistani people at all. Forget the security risk for me, that if I land there, I don't think they're going to want me. Even if they did, it would just literally be to shoot me at the airport. So, but even if there was none of that, my mindset is I need to be in a Western country. My mindset is a Western mindset now, right? So, so I personally see those countries as different. That doesn't mean that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can go there and push whatever they want in those countries, because it is they are based on Western foundations, right? Western values and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is that with that question is the Aboriginal people and the people who were there before, ethnically, would they want the white people to leave, right? Because let's be honest, even if the white people ethnically are not from like Canada, America, etc., but they have built those countries up and invested a lot of money and effort into it. And frankly speaking, if all the white people just got up and left, will the people who were there before the white people came, will they be able to manage the buildings, the infrastructure, and everything? So I would say it would be an interesting question to ask the Aboriginal people and like the native people, the native Indians or whatever. Like, would you want everyone gone? Because maybe they don't, because they're like, actually, can you stay? You know, so because they're protected anyway, I think in law, right? They're protected in law. They're protected, their nativity. And I think that's the question, that we don't have that currently in England. We don't have the protection here. So that's making people more sensitive and more insecure because there's no protection. So in some of the other podcasts I heard, so that is the point, I guess. If we do legislate protecting the native white people, and when I say white, I'm using that word deliberately, because if you're not white, with all due respect, if you're black and brown, then obviously it's unlikely that you're from this land. And this is what I was thinking about. And I know a lot of you guys don't like Islam. I know this, but there is something mentioned in the Quran when I read the translation of the Quran, is that when God said that He's made us different, He's made us into different colors, so we recognize each other, right? Recognize each other. That quote kept coming up when I was thinking about this. I was thinking, that's interesting. So God wants us to recognize each other and the differences. And how can you tell where someone is from in the world? By your skin color. You know, like I said, I could be here 100 years. I'm never going to be like a white person, right? I'm never going to be a black person either. I'm never going to be Chinese. So then I was thinking, because I do believe in God. Again, like I said, I'm not very religious, and I know you guys are put off by the Quran, but that is one thing that stood out. Like I kept thinking about that. Actually, God has made us this way. He wants us. There are differences. So I know we're a little bit sensitive when it comes to all this kind of stuff, but so, and then when it came to English, when we're speaking about, like you mentioned about ethnicity and, you know, the native population, they're made up of different like genes, like it's a different gene mixture of a gene pool. I mean, it's a question for you guys, that if we're speaking about English people didn't exist before England was formed. So if we just start from the point of when was England formed, in terms of genes, who was there at the time, which tribes or whoever was there at the time, and that is what we assume therefore is English, right? So if someone came ethnically later, they weren't part of the England at the time when England originated, and therefore by default they're not. I don't know, that's a question. It's all sensitive. Then the other thing, can I just say